Eli Ward had always been the quiet student. He came from a small human colony on the edge of Sol space, and no one expected him to stand out at the Royal Academy of Orion. The academy was filled with bright alien minds, tall and elegant beings with crystal blue skin and glowing eyes. They called themselves Sarathians, a race known for logic, control, and order. To them, emotions were a sign of weakness, and humanity's reputation for feelings and chaos made Eli something to observe, not to respect. Still, he kept to himself, studying xenobiology and listening more than he spoke. He liked to understand things. He liked peace. On the day of the solar flare, peace ended. The academy alarms howled across the glass city, echoing through towers made of light. A magnetic storm had burst from the twin suns of Orion, threatening to burn through the sky's defense grid. Students were ordered to evacuate to orbiting shelters. Eli boarded a small transport shuttle with 10 others, mostly Sarathians who refused to even look at him. He sat near the window watching the golden clouds swirl. He felt uneasy, as if something was about to go wrong. Something did. Midway through ascent, lightning tore across the sky. The shuttle trembled as systems flickered and failed. Someone screamed. The pilot shouted commands in a language Eli barely understood. Then came the blinding flash, and the shuttle was falling, spinning like a dying bird toward the glowing forests below. Trees made of crystal tore through the hull as the ship crashed into the alien wilderness. When Eli woke, silence pressed around him. Smoke drifted from shattered panels and sunlight cut through blue mist. Pain filled his shoulder, but he forced himself to move. The others were gone. Some had fled, maybe rescued. He stumbled through debris, calling out, his voice lost in the hum of strange insects. Then he saw a flicker of silver, a hand, delicate and still beneath the wreckage. He ran to it and froze. It was her. He had seen her once before from a distance during an academic ceremony. Princess Lorena Velsol, heir to the Sarathian throne. Her skin glowed faintly even in the smoke, and her long white hair shimmered with the reflection of crystal shards. She was breathing shallowly, her royal crest pulsing weakly at her neck. A cracked support beam had trapped her leg. Eli's heart raced. He knew the Sarathians considered it forbidden for an outsider to touch a royal, but he also knew she would die if he did nothing. Ted faint warmth, and it lit the small space in a soft silver glow. Eli sat beside her, exhausted but afraid to sleep. Every few hours he checked her breathing and refilled her mask. He didn't know if rescue would come. The communication beacon was destroyed, and the nearest city was hundreds of kilometers away. Still, he refused to give up. Humanity had a saying, "You don't walk away from someone who needs you." He whispered it under his breath like a promise. By morning, the storms had cleared. Mist rolled over the glass trees, painting the world in blue light. Eli stepped outside to search for supplies and water. He used fragments of the shuttle to collect condensation, storing droplets in small metal cups. When he returned, he found her awake. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing like twin moons. For a moment she didn't move, only stared at him, the strange human with blood-stained hands and tired eyes. "Where am I?" she murmured, her voice soft and melodic. "You're safe," he said quietly. "We crashed. I pulled you out." She blinked as if trying to understand his words. Her gaze dropped to the torn fabric around her leg, then to the oxygen mask beside her. "You gave your air," she whispered. He shrugged. "You needed it more." The princess looked at him in silence for a long time. Sarathians rarely showed emotion, but something flickered in her expression. Confusion, disbelief, maybe gratitude. She had always been taught that humans were reckless, ruled by impulse and desire, yet the human before her had risked his life with calm, deliberate care. Eli didn't notice her watching him. He was busy adjusting the broken transmitter, hoping to catch a signal. His hand shook slightly from exhaustion, but he didn't complain. "We'll get out of here," he said, more to himself than to her. "Someone will find us." Lorena closed her eyes again, listening to his voice. There was something steady in it, something unlike anything she had ever known among her people. For the first time in her life she felt safe, not because of guards or walls, but because of a human who refused to leave her side. That night, as the alien moons rose, Eli sat outside the shelter and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, ships were searching. He wondered if they would even believe a human could save a princess. He smiled faintly. Maybe they didn't have to. Maybe saving her was reason enough. The days after the crash passed slowly. Eli repaired what he could from the wreckage and built a better shelter between two crystal trees. The trees hummed softly at night, glowing like tall lanterns in the mist, their light changing color with the temperature. The strange forest looked beautiful, but he knew it was dangerous too. The ground gas was toxic without the filter mask, and some of the glowing plants released fumes that could make a human lose consciousness. Still, he managed to survive by keeping close to the crashed shuttle, rationing the last packets of food. Princess Lorena could finally move her injured leg. Her body healed faster than his, the silver tone of her skin bright again. She sat quietly most of the time, watching Eli as he worked. At first, she didn't speak much. She wasn't used to talking to a human. Her people believed emotions caused disorder, and she had been raised to control her feelings. But Eli's silence was different. He worked without waiting for thanks, without pride, almost as if helping her was a normal thing. That puzzled her. One afternoon she asked softly, "Why did you stay with me? You could have walked toward the mountains. You might have found a signal there." Eli was collecting rainwater in a metal dish. He looked at her and gave a tired smile. "I don't leave people behind," he said. "Where I come from, that's how we were taught." She tilted her head, curious. "Humans help even when there is no gain?" "Most of us try to," he replied. "Sometimes that's all we can do." She studied him for a long moment, trying to understand what kind of creature risked his life without reason. Her tutors had told her humans were unpredictable and ruled by instinct. Yet the young man before her seemed calm, thoughtful, and careful with every move. He fixed things, planned ahead, and made sure she ate before he did. When night fell, the temperature dropped again. Eli lit a small heater from the shuttle core, and the soft warmth filled the shelter. Lorena sat beside the glowing energy cell, her eyes reflecting the faint firelight. "You are strange," she said finally. Eli laughed a little. "I've been told that before." "I thought humans were always loud and emotional," she continued. "But you are quiet. You speak only when needed," he shrugged. "Guess I'm not like most." Silence returned, but it was a different kind of silence, calm and comfortable. For the first time since the crash, Lorena smiled. It was small, hesitant, almost hidden, but Eli noticed it. The air between them felt lighter. Over the next few days, they found a rhythm. Eli repaired the transmitter piece by piece. Lorena helped him search the wreckage for power cells, learning how to handle the rough metal edges carefully. Sometimes she asked him questions about Earth, about the oceans, about rain, about music. He tried to explain in simple words, describing the smell of sea air and the sound of waves. She listened with fascination, her silver eyes wide. On her world, the seas were made of crystal dust. The idea of liquid water falling from the sky amazed her. At night, they would listen to the distant storm rumble beyond the horizon. The forest sparkled each time lightning struck, the trees glowing brighter with the charge. Eli once said it looked like a heartbeat pulsing across the world. Lorena didn't understand the meaning, but she liked how it sounded. One morning, Eli noticed her walking without limping. He smiled. "You're healing fast," she nodded. "Our bodies repair differently. The royal line has strong energy flow. But even then, I would not have survived if you hadn't shared your air." He tried to downplay it. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "Not anyone." Her voice carried a tone he hadn't heard before, respect. It startled him more than any storm. That evening, while searching through the damaged shuttle, Eli finally caught a faint signal on the emergency beacon. The static was weak but real. He boosted the transmitter with power from a spare battery. A distorted voice came through, speaking in Scifian language. Lorena's eyes widened. "That's the Royal Search Fleet," she whispered. "They're close." Relief washed over him. "Then you'll be safe soon." But Lorena hesitated. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "When they arrive, they may not allow you to approach. Humans are not permitted near royal bloodlines." He gave a short laugh, though it didn't sound happy. "I figured. Don't worry. Once they know you're safe, I'll stay out of sight." Her gaze softened. "You don't understand. They might erase what happened. They might say I survived on my own." "That doesn't matter," Eli said quietly. "You're alive. That's what matters." For a long moment she said nothing. The forest wind carried soft notes through the glowing trees, and her hair shimmered like white silk in the light. "You are different from what I was taught," she said finally. Maybe your kind are not what we believed. Eli smiled faintly. Maybe your kind aren't either. That night, the signal grew stronger. Distant lights flickered across the horizon. The royal rescue ships breaking through the storm clouds. Lorena stood near the shelter entrance, her eyes glowing brighter than the trees. Eli watched her silently, knowing this was probably the last night they would share. When she turned toward him, there was something almost human in her face, a quiet warmth that words couldn't explain. She stepped closer and said, "When they come for me, stay close. I will not let them harm you." He wanted to protest, but something in her tone made him stop. He only nodded. The two of them stood side by side beneath the twin moons, surrounded by silver light and the soft hum of the alien forest. For the first time since the crash, neither of them felt alone. The night ended with the sound of thunder and engines. The forest shimmered under waves of light as royal ships descended through the clouds. The twin moons faded behind the silver glow of their landing thrusters. Eli stood beside the princess, his heart pounding as the air filled with soft static. The rescue team had arrived at last. When the first Sarathian guard stepped out, their silver armor reflected the blue light of the trees. They carried energy spears that hummed softly. Their tall, perfect forms made Eli feel smaller than ever. He could hear them speaking in their own language, fast and sharp. The princess raised her hand, calling to them, her voice calm and strong. They recognized her crest immediately and bowed, though their eyes never left Eli. One of them stepped forward and said something that Eli didn't understand. The princess's face hardened. She turned slightly toward Eli and said quietly, "They think you're a contaminant. They believe you harmed me." Eli froze. "What, after all this?" He stopped himself. He could see how tense the guards were. "They follow protocol," she said. "To them, your presence near me is forbidden." The guards advanced slowly. Lorena stepped in front of Eli and raised her hand again. The air between her and the soldiers shimmered with royal energy. "He saved me," she said in her language, her tone firm. "He is under my protection." The guards stopped at once. They looked uncertain, waiting for a higher command. One of them spoke through a communicator, and soon a taller figure appeared. A royal commander, his armor marked with golden lines. He bowed deeply to the princess, but his voice carried doubt. "My princess," he said in Sarathian, "no outsider can remain near the royal line. We will escort him to isolation until the council decides." Eli didn't understand the words, but he could see the concern in Lorena's eyes. She turned toward him and said quietly in human speech, "They want to separate us." He sighed, trying to hide the fear in his voice. "If that's the rule, it's fine. I just want to know you'll be safe." She shook her head. "No, you deserve to be honored, not treated like a disease." Before he could answer, she faced the commander again. Her tone became sharper, more powerful. Every soldier froze as she spoke, her voice echoing with command authority. She declared that the human student would travel in her personal shuttle, under her direct protection. The commander hesitated, but no one dared to argue. The order of a royal heir was absolute. Eli followed them to the ship. The ramp glowed under his feet, a ing would change. When they arrived at the royal city, the sky shimmered with floating spires. Towers of light rose above oceans of glass, connected by bridges that curved like ribbons. Crowds filled the platforms as the royal shuttle descended. Eli could see them staring through the transparent walls. Hundreds of Sarathians, their glowing eyes fixed on the strange human walking beside their princess. Inside the palace, officials gathered immediately. Lorena was taken to the healing chamber, and Eli was led to a waiting hall. The walls shifted colors, reacting to emotion, and he realized they pulsed red whenever he felt anxious. Guards stood around him, silent and cold. After what felt like hours, the princess entered, now dressed in royal attire. She looked different, stronger, calmer, every trace of weakness gone. When she spoke, the hall grew still. "This human saved my life," she said to the council members assembled around them. "He gave his breath so I could live. He is not a contaminant. He is a savior." The room filled with whispers. One elder stood and spoke in their language, his voice low and disapproving. Lorena listened but did not bow. Then she surprised everyone. She switched to human speech so Eli could understand. "They do not believe you acted without reason. They think you helped me to gain power or favor." Eli looked down. "I didn't want anything," he said softly. "I know," she replied. "And I will prove it." She turned to the council and spoke again, this time louder. If you doubt his truth, test it with the right of memory. The hall fell silent. Eli saw the elders' expressions change from arrogance to surprise. Whatever the rite was, it clearly held power. The high elder's voice trembled. The rite is sacred. It has not been used for centuries. Then today it will be, said Lorena. I submit myself to it as witness. If his memories show deceit, I will accept the penalty. No one spoke after that. The guards lowered their weapons and the council ended the session. The decision was made. The human would face the truth trance. Later that night, in a quiet chamber filled with blue light, Lorena approached Eli. Tomorrow, they will look into your memories, she said. It may hurt, but I will be there. He nodded slowly. You've done enough for me already. Her eyes softened. You saved me first. Now it's my turn. Outside the palace walls, the city lights shimmered like stars. Inside, the princess of a proud empire prepared to stand beside a human student, and the galaxy was about to witness something it had never seen before. Morning arrived quietly over the royal city. The sun poured through the tall glass towers and the air shimmered with soft gold light. In the highest chamber of the palace, Eli Ward stood alone, staring at his reflection in a mirror made of living crystal. He had been given clean clothes, though they didn't feel like his own. He looked different, tired, uncertain, and far from home. Today, the Sarathian High Council would look into his mind. They called it the truth trance, an ancient process to reveal the heart of anyone who stood before them. He didn't understand how it worked, but he trusted Lorena. She had kept her promise since the day they were rescued. Now she was risking her own status, even her life, to defend a human she had known for only a few days. He thought about the quiet nights in the forest, her strange questions about humanity, and the small smile she gave when he spoke of rain. It all felt like a dream that had turned real. When the guards came for him, he followed without resistance. They led him into a great circular hall. The walls were bright and alive, covered with shifting patterns of light that moved like slow waves. Around the edges stood the 12 elders of the Sarathian Council. Their eyes glowed softly, each one carrying centuries of memory and power. In the center stood a tall silver chair connected to floating strands of light. The princess was already there. She wore white robes and stood beside the chair, calm and steady. When Eli entered, she turned to him and gave a small nod, the kind that told him she would not let him face this alone. The high elder stepped forward. His voice filled the hall like distant thunder. Human Eli Ward of Saul, you are accused of breaking royal law by touching the heir and endangering her life. You are also credited with saving her from death. The council will decide which truth remains. Eli swallowed hard but said nothing. He had no words that could make them believe him. Lorena stepped closer to the council. You question his heart, she said. Then see it as it truly is. I request the right of memory to reveal his intent. The elders murmured in surprise. The high elder frowned but finally nodded. So be it. The rite shall begin. Eli was guided to the silver chair. Thin threads of light wrapped around his temples and hands. The air grew heavy and the sound in the room faded until only his heartbeat remained. Then came the touch and a cold whisper against his thoughts. It wasn't painful, but it felt like standing in a storm with his mind open. Images started to form in the air around him. They saw his memories beyond the crash, the broken shuttle, the crystal forest glowing in blue light. They watched as he found Lorena under the wreckage, struggling to lift the metal beam that trapped her. They saw his hands cut and bleeding, his breath fogging in the cold air as he gave her his oxygen. They saw him build the shelter, stay awake all night to keep her warm, and whisper to himself that she would live. The room was silent. The elders watched every image, their expressions softening. They had never seen human emotions this raw, this pure. There was no deception, no pride, only instinct. The instinct to protect. Then the memory shifted again. They saw him looking up at the stars, whispering that maybe saving her was enough. That moment lingered longer than any other. When the vision ended, the light threads around him dissolved into mist. The air grew still again. Lorena stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. You have seen it, she said. You have seen what I saw. He had no reason to save me, no reward, no hope of gain. He acted only from kindness. That is the truth. The high elder lowered his head. For the first time in centuries, the council remained speechless. One of the older women among them finally spoke. Humans are driven by emotion, she said softly. Yet this emotion has purity. It is not weakness. It is strength. The others murmured in agreement. The High Elder turned to Eli and spoke clearly. Human Eli Ward, the council finds no deceit in your heart. You are free of all accusation. Your actions have brought honor, not harm. Eli exhaled, feeling lightheaded with relief. He looked toward Lorena, who smiled for the first time in public. The soft glow around her crest brightened, and the crowd watching from the gallery began to whisper in awe. A royal had just defied the law for a human, and won. After the ceremony, the princess met him in the quiet garden behind the hall. The air smelled of silver leaves and sweet wind. "It's over," she said gently. He nodded. "I guess so. I didn't expect them to believe it." "They didn't believe," she replied. "They saw," he smiled faintly. "Thank you for standing up for me." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the garden light. "You changed more than you know," she said softly. "My people saw a truth they had forgotten. We once believed compassion made us weak. But now they've seen it can save a life, even an empire." They walked side by side among the glowing flowers, silent for a while. The stars above the city looked close enough to touch. Lorena stopped and looked up at them. "Eli," she said, "I will not let them forget what you did. Not ever." He didn't answer, but the warmth in her voice said more than words ever could. Somewhere deep inside, he realized this was no longer just about saving her. It was about changing what her people believed humanity was. Not a threat, but a reminder of something they had lost long ago. And as the garden lights flickered like tiny stars around them, Eli Ward, the quiet human student from Seoul, had unknowingly begun to rewrite history across two worlds. Days passed after the trial, but the memory of what happened inside the council hall spread across the Sarathian Empire like wind through glass towers. Everyone spoke of the human who gave his heir to the princess, the student who acted without gain, the boy who made the council bow. The name Eli Ward became known beyond the academy walls, whispered first with disbelief, then with quiet respect. Eli didn't understand all of it. He only knew that people looked at him differently now. Some smiled when he walked by, while others avoided him. He wasn't used to attention. He still wore the same clothes, still ate alone in the quiet corners of the academy garden, and still studied late into the night. But now the silence around him felt heavier, filled with things unspoken. Princess Lorena, meanwhile, was never left alone. Royal advisors followed her everywhere, whispering about what she had done. Some praised her for showing courage, while others feared she had broken too many traditions. She listened politely to all of them, but her eyes often drifted toward the window where the human student sometimes walked below. One evening, she found him sitting under a silver tree, sketching the shape of the palace towers in a small notebook. The air was calm and the stars were just beginning to appear. She stepped closer, her robes glowing softly in the moonlight. "You still draw?" she asked. Eli looked up, surprised. "It helps me think," he said. "Back home, I used to draw the sky. What did your sky look like?" "Blue," he said, smiling. "Sometimes pink when the sun went down, sometimes full of rain." She sat beside him, curious. "Rain," she repeated. "That's the water that falls from clouds?" "Yeah," he said. "It makes everything smell clean." Lorena closed her eyes as if trying to imagine it. "Our clouds are metal dust. They never fall." For a moment they both sat quietly, listening to the hum of the garden lights. Then she turned to him. "The council has agreed to something," she said softly. "They want to create a new program, a bridge between our kinds. They want humans and Sarathians to study together." He blinked. "You mean here? On this world?" "Yes, they will call it the Cultural Academy of Orion, and they want you to be its first human member." Eli stared at her, unsure if he heard right. "Me, I'm just a student. There are people far smarter than me back home." Lorena smiled faintly. "Maybe, but they didn't live what you lived. They didn't show what you showed." He wanted to argue, but her calm expression stopped him. He realized she had already decided this long before telling him. "I don't know if I belong here," he admitted. "You already do," she said quietly. "You proved that without meaning to." The words stayed with him for days. He accepted the position reluctantly, unsure if he could live up to what they expected. But slowly, he began to see what the new academy meant. Human scientists arrived from Earth and nearby colonies. Sarathian scholars welcomed them cautiously. Together, they worked on shared projects, healing technology, communication bridges, and cultural exchange. It was strange at first, like two worlds speaking different languages, yet every small success built trust. Eli became the link between them. He didn't plan it. It just happened. Humans asked him how to greet Sarathians without offense, and Sarathians asked him why humans smiled so often. He learned to explain both sides with patience. He found himself speaking in two rhythms, switching between emotion and calm logic, blending them like colors in one painting. Lorena visited the academy often. She would stand at the back of the class watching the students, humans and Sarathians, sitting together for the first time in history. Sometimes she joined their lessons, listening more than she spoke. Once she whispered to Eli, "Do you see what you've done?" He shook his head. "No, you did this," she smiled. "No, I only opened a door. You walked through it." Over time, the new academy grew. News of cooperation reached other systems. Species that once avoided humans began to study their methods. The Empire, known for its cold order, slowly learned warmth again. Sarathian children began to draw pictures of Earth's blue skies, and human students wrote poems about the glowing trees of Orion. One evening, during the dedication of a new learning wing, the princess gave a speech. Her voice echoed through the crystal halls. "Our future is not made by blood or power," she said. "It is made by understanding." Once, a human reminded me that compassion can save more than one life. It can save entire worlds. Eli stood at the edge of the crowd, trying not to be noticed. But when the ceremony ended, Lorena walked straight to him. "You never like attention," she said softly. "I'm not good at speeches," he admitted. "Then let me speak for you," she said. Smiling, she handed him a small metallic emblem, the royal seal of unity, a symbol once reserved only for the Sarathian nobility. "This belongs to those who build bridges, not walls," she said. He looked at it, unsure what to say. "I don't know if I deserve this." "Maybe not," she said lightly. "But you earned it anyway." The two of them walked through the garden again that night, just as they had after the trial. The stars shone brighter and the air was calm. Around them, laughter echoed from the new academy, a sound that had never existed on Orion before, the sound of humans and Sarathians learning side by side. Eli looked at the princess and said quietly, "You changed everything." Lorena shook her head gently. "No, Eli, you did. I only followed where your heart led." And as the wind moved softly through the silver trees, both of them knew that the story of one human's kindness had become something greater, a living bridge between two civilizations that had once believed they could never understand each other. Years passed quietly on Orion. The world that once looked down on humanity now spoke of them with respect. The new cultural academy stood in the heart of the capital city, surrounded by glowing gardens and silver fountains. It became a place where humans and Sarathians studied together, shared knowledge, and built friendships that once seemed impossible. Eli Ward never thought he would stay this long. He had arrived as a lost student, a stranger from a small colony, and now he was one of the founders of the academy. He never liked being called a hero, but no one else could forget what he had done. To him, it still felt like something simple, one life helping another. But to the Sarathians, it had become a symbol of a new beginning. Every morning he walked through the halls of the academy, greeting students from different worlds. Some bowed to him out of respect. Others smiled warmly, calling him Professor Ward. He tried to keep life normal, teaching about human biology, empathy, and survival. But deep down, he sometimes missed Earth, the sound of real rain, the smell of sea air. Lorena visited often, though she was now more than a princess. Her father, the old emperor, had stepped down, leaving her as the ruling monarch. Her leadership changed the empire in quiet ways. The laws that once forbade contact between species were rewritten. Trade with human colonies grew, and new research centers opened on both sides. The empire, once cold and perfect, had learned to breathe again. But power came with distance. She was surrounded by advisors, politics, and duties that filled every hour of her day. Still, whenever she could, she came to the academy without guards, wearing a simple white cloak that made her look more like a student than a queen. One evening, as the twin suns sank below the horizon, Eli was sitting in the garden, working on his notes. The soft glow of crystal flowers reflected on his face. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see her walking toward him. She smiled, tired but warm. "You still work after sunset," she said gently. He shrugged. "Old habit. My mind gets quiet when the world does." She sat beside him. Mine never does. Too many voices. Too many decisions. He looked at her. You always wanted this, didn't you? To lead? She smiled faintly. I thought I did. But I've learned that leading is not the same as ruling. It is listening, and sometimes it's very lonely. Eli nodded. I know that feeling. They sat in silence for a moment. The air was cool, and faint music came from the Academy Hall where students were practicing for the Unity Festival. For the first time in years, humans and Sarathians would celebrate together. Lorena looked around the garden, her eyes soft. Do you remember this place? Of course, he said. It's where you told me the council would test my memories. And you told me you weren't afraid. He laughed quietly. I was terrified. I just didn't want you to see it. She smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes. You've always been brave, even when you didn't think so. They watched as a group of children ran past, laughing, some human, some Sarathian, their hands linked, glowing bracelets lighting up as they played. The sight made Lorena's voice soften. These children are the reason I keep going, she said. They are the first generation to grow up without fear of each other. They call me their teacher sometimes. But in truth, you are the one who taught them most. Eli shook his head. All I did was show them what it means to care. That is everything, she said quietly. Later that night, the academy held a small ceremony to mark its 10th year. The hall was full of students, teachers, and visitors from distant colonies. The walls shimmered with living light, forming images of Earth and Orion side by side. Lorena stood on the stage, dressed in a flowing silver robe, her royal crest glowing softly. She spoke slowly, her voice calm but full of emotion. 10 years ago, she said, a human from a small world reminded us that life is not measured by blood or rank, but by kindness. He crossed every rule of our world to save one life, and because of that act, millions now share one sky. The crowd stood in silence, moved by her words. Then she turned and motioned toward Eli, who stood near the back. The light followed him as she continued. To honor that truth, this academy will now bear his name. From this day it shall be called the Ward Institute. Eli froze. The hall erupted in soft applause. He wasn't sure how to react. His face turned red as everyone around him smiled. Lorena looked at him with gentle pride. After the ceremony, he met her near the balcony overlooking the city. The night air shimmered with blue lights from the towers. You didn't have to do that, he said softly. I did, she replied. Because what you did cannot be forgotten. This world needs reminders, reminders that compassion still exists. He looked at the city below. It feels strange. All I wanted was to go home. And yet, she said, you built one here. Her words lingered in the air. She reached out, touching the emblem pinned to his coat, the same royal seal she had given him years ago. You gave my people a gift, she whispered. Now they pass it on to their children. That is how legacies begin. The wind carried her voice softly, and for a moment, the two. Tonight, she said, we celebrate 10 years of unity. 10 years since the day one act of courage changed us all. Her gaze found him in the crowd. When I first met Eli Ward, I thought humanity was a storm. Wild, emotional, and unpredictable. But I learned that storms bring rain, and rain brings life. Humanity gave us the courage to feel again. The crowd grew silent. Every word carried warmth and truth. Our children will inherit a world where compassion is not weakness, she said softly. Because one human showed us that the heart can lead even when logic fails. Eli felt his chest tighten. He had never thought of himself as someone special. But hearing her words filled him with something deep. Not pride, but quiet peace. After the speech, music started again, and the courtyard filled with light. The festival continued long into the night. Lorena found him near the edge of the garden, standing under the silver trees. She smiled, her eyes glowing in the soft light. You always hide after I speak, she said. I just don't know what to say after that, he answered. You make it sound like I changed the whole galaxy. You did, she said gently. You just don't see it. They walked through the quiet part of the garden away from the noise of the festival. The soft sound of the wind moved through the glowing leaves. For a while, they didn't speak. It was enough to walk in silence. After a few moments, Lorena looked up at the night sky. I used to think my people were perfect, she said. We built cities of glass, learned to control our emotions, and believed we had no need for anyone else. But when I lay dying in that forest, it wasn't logic that saved me. It was your heart. Eli looked at her gently. Maybe both had a part in it, he said. You believed in me when your people didn't, she smiled softly. Perhaps. But you showed me how to believe first. The soft glow of the trees made her eyes shine. She turned toward him and said, Do you ever think about going back home? Sometimes, he admitted. I miss the sound of rain. I miss the blue sky. But when I look around here, the students, the laughter, the peace, and I feel like I'm already home. Lorena nodded slowly. Home is not always where we are born. Sometimes it's where we are understood. They reached the edge of the garden where the statues of the first students stood, human and Sarathian side by side. In the center was a small symbol carved into the stone, 2 hands touching, one glowing silver, one human. It had become the emblem of the new world they had built together. Lorena touched the carving and said quietly, I call them my children, but they are yours too. Every student here carries something you gave, kindness, courage, empathy. You planted it, Eli. I only helped it grow. He looked around at the academy, its towers bright against the night sky. The laughter of students echoed in the distance. Maybe that's the best kind of reward, he said softly. To see something live beyond you. She turned to him, her expression full of warmth. That is the greatest reward, she said. And it is what you gave me too. They stood there for a long moment, silent under the stars. The world they had once fought to survive was now alive with hope. The old fears were gone, replaced by something stronger. Understanding. When the wind changed, carrying the faint sound of students singing, Eli smiled. You know, he said quietly, I never imagined I'd end up here. I just wanted to finish my studies and go back home. And instead, she said, you helped an entire race find its heart. He laughed softly. I think you give me too much credit. She shook her head. No, I give you exactly what you earned. The twin moons rose higher, lighting the garden with a soft silver glow. The celebration continued far behind them, but here in the quiet everything felt timeless. Lorena looked at him once more and said, Thank you, Eli, for saving me, for saving us. He didn't know how to reply, so he simply smiled. The stars above shimmered like eyes watching over them, and the academy bells began to ring, marking the end of the festival. Students poured into the courtyard, holding glowing lanterns that floated into the sky one by one. The lanterns carried messages written by both humans and Sarathians, words of peace, gratitude, and dreams for the future. Eli and Lorena watched as the lights drifted upward, joining the stars. And as he stood beside her, Eli realized that his story, the story of one human who refused to walk away, had become something eternal. It lived in every lantern that rose, in every laugh that filled the air, and in every child who would grow up never knowing there was once a time when humans and Sarathians feared each other. It was no longer just his story. It was theirs, a story of trust, unity, and a single act of kindness that reached beyond stars. And under the twin moons of Orion, the human student and the Sarathian queen stood together, proof that sometimes one small act of humanity can change the fate of an entire galaxy.